map impact. I just want to know if I can have more map impact as Victor, or what I can do to like change the game into my favor besides just staying in my lane.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we'll like
But,
definitely have a look. I get the normal way the Victor kind of wins games, I suppose, is that like you have like you're right, your map pressure is not normally the greatest, but you have like a really good 1v1. So like if you can just keep your opponent in lane, that's really good. And just in general, for champions that aren't very good at roaming, a lot of their pressure early will come from either, like pushing the lane and forcing the enemy jungler to respond, or from like placing wards and just kind of like, just like leveraging your kind of like lane priority in order to just like generate kind of like a lead around mid. It's like very rare that you're just gonna actually like gank top or bot, but you can make
right.
mid like really difficult for them. So we'll kind of see, I guess, as it goes.
Okay.
Um, okay, so the first thing I would probably say is that you definitely can be a lot more aggressive early game than they can here. So one thing that I like to kind of think about at level 1 is like I look at my matchup and I look at the junglers. So one thing that's like real obvious here is that you have an Elise and they have a Diana. So that means like your jungler is going to have a lot more pressure on the map than theirs does. So you shouldn't be worried too much about getting ganked. Which is nice. So like early game, consider
Okay.
jungle matchup is a good place to start. Just like have a look at like, are these ganking champs, are these farming champs and stuff like that. I do think that your setup here is potentially a little greedy. So I like the Aerie, but Ghost obviously is like a great team fighting summoner, but it's not very good for lane. And a lot of the time, Victor kind of has to go TP. Like, again, not always, but like a lot of the time you do go TP on Victor because it allows you to really like bully that 1v1. Like, it basically gives you a second health bar. It allows you to make sure you can hit spikes like Lost Chapter or whatever, like on time. And another part
Uh-huh.
is like, if you're in a matchup where you're going to be heavy trading, like this one, you really want a Corrupting Potion. And Corrupting Potion synergizes really well with TP. So there's like
Okay.
a lot of stuff here, but like runes itemization. So generally, like the way you kind of choose your starting items is like Doran's Ring should be versus like even, or not even even, just like versus like easy matchups, or matchups where they like won't trade back much. Where you're just like hitting them, but they're not like hitting you back too much. And then corrupting part is for like heavy trading matchups. So like this is an example where I think both of you should be poking each other quite a lot, especially because like she has
Uh-huh.
Aerie and Ignite, and so do you. So that's really like a corrupting pot matchup, I would say. And then
Okay.
like TP plus corrupting is the strongest early game setup, and I would say like verse most, or honestly just like, yeah, most of the time on Victor you do just want TP and corrupting, because it's like TP allows Victor to farm kind of in like the side lanes. You don't really need Ghost to team fight well on Victor. Like, it's certainly good versus some champs, but I think, yeah, I don't know. I just think TP offers too much, so I'd probably go
So
for TP
basically only
corrupting.
Doran's Ring into like melee matchups, or
Yeah,
where I'm
it's
not
like
going to be getting hit too
melees that
much.
like don't hit you, or like there's still some melees you want corrupting versus, like Zed's an example because he like pokes quite a lot. But like, yeah, if you're versus a Kali or something, Doran's really good. If you're versus say a range champ that doesn't poke much, like a Corki or a Veigar, or even some champs where you can just avoid their poke, like Talia. If you stand behind the creeps well enough, like she shouldn't be able to hit you
Mhm.
back. But like if we're thinking stuff like, Karmas, Azirs, Orianas, Syndra's, like they're always going to be able to hit you back. So like you need corrupting pots versus those champs for sure.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd say this is like the easiest way to just have a stronger early game to begin with, especially because like you're going airy. Like if you're going something like First Strike, then like First Strike Ghost, then you're definitely playing for scaling, right? But I think this
Right.
is like probably correct. Like you want to have some impact early, which makes sense. So I think, yeah, like corrupting
I
pot
have one more
TP.
question.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know. So I know Aries good, but I'm not sure when to go Airy and when to go first strike
hmm
on Victor.
Yeah, so I'd say normally I go, I'd say like my default is probably airy. Like if you don't want to think about it, I just go for airy. And the reason is that like I feel like there are some matchups where it's very difficult to proc first strike. So I guess it would rather be like first strike is bad versus champs that have like similar range to you, because they're just going to be able to like poke you at the same time. So examples of that is like it's really bad, I think, versus Syndra and Azir in particular. First strike is like good versus like champs, that you can't bully anyway. Like either because they're too tanky or they have like too much sustain. So an example would actually be something like maybe Akali, where even if you like harass her a lot, just with Doran Shield, she can just like sustain, Doran Shield second wind fleet if she needs it. Tanks, it's really good against as well. And then I'd say Airy. Airy should be default. Like, let me actually bring up the mid champions list and we can kind of like look at them all.
Okay.
Mid. So like Anivia, I think you can probably bully, so I'd go Airy. Casson, you can bully as well. I'd take Airy. Zac is definitely a first strike matchup. Like I don't think you can kill him, and I don't think you can like bully or do anything to him anyway. Versus Zed, this is up to you. I would probably take Spellbook, but a lot of people would take Airy. So like if you don't want to use Spellbook because you don't know how, or you just like don't care, then probably Airy. Cassie should be Airy. Akshan, I'd probably go first strike again as like another champ where, too long range, can't really like. I mean, he's short range, but it's like it's difficult to actually trade your full combo into Akshan without taking damage back. So I probably wouldn't. Then like Vex, Airy, Cat, Airy, Silas, Airy. I'd probably first strike versus like Yasuo, Pantheon, Aurelia, Singe, because all these champs are like kind of too tanky to kill, and you're better off like scaling versus them. So, I mean, we could go through all of them, but basically it's just like, if you look at the matchup and you're like, okay, realistically, I can't poke this champion out, you probably want first strike instead. But if you can do some damage, then you're going to want to go Airy.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so that all out of the way, you kind of get in the game. So, okay, first thing is that when the game starts, this is like really important for Viktor, is you need to figure out how long the enemy champion's cooldowns are. Because Viktor is a champ that the only pressure you have early pretty much is bullying your opponent. So if you don't bully your opponent, you're pretty much just playing Kassadin because you're just going to be like sitting there, So I think like before the game starts, what you should do is just look up okay, let me just go back. Just like Google, say Karma lol, come down here to fandom, and then you can like have a look at her cooldowns. So we've got Q is 9 seconds, W is 12, and E is 10. So you don't need to know the exact number, but you do just need to have like a rough estimate of like how long they are. Basically, like, this is like a reasonably long cooldown, right? It's like 9 seconds. So that's the one you need to consider the most, is her Q.
Okay.
So like when you're coming to this lane, straight away, this is 9 seconds now, where if you walk up to her and Q her, she has no response. Like the best she can do is auto attack, but it just gets consumed by your shield anyway. So like here, it doesn't really make sense that she's able to auto the wave, because all during this time, she doesn't have Q, and you should just be able to run up and Q auto. So early game, consider jungle matchup, but then like pretty much with Airy, you want to spam Q on cooldown, pretty much. Like you just want to like walk up to them and Q them. And if they don't have a cooldown, so like if they've already used their cooldown, look to auto as well. Like basically, if she had Q up, you probably just want to Q her and then walk away so you don't take too much damage. But if she has no Q, like she did during this time, just walk up and Q auto her, and there's no way she can trade back because Viktor's 1v1 trades are just like too strong.
Okay.
Yeah, so like every time,
right there.
Yeah, every time this is like right now, just Q auto. So like yeah, a Q is decent, and like you should be just looking for that every time it's up. But like you can definitely get more given that she still doesn't have the cooldown, right? Yeah, because like she's actually wasting the cooldowns a lot, but it's not really getting punished. And so another thing would be to just like try harass opponent when they go for CS. So like if we just kind of just like go back, just like pay attention to all the CS she gets without really like taking any harass. So like like this one, for example, this could be like you Q her, or this one you could Q her, or this one you could Q her, but you have Q all during this time. So it's like lots of opportunities where you can't really like do anything. Now when your Q is down, obviously you can't do a whole lot. But same thing, like she's going for another creep with cooldown down. And another like general rule is if your opponent doesn't have a CD, they shouldn't be allowed to CS without taking damage. So like here, you can position kind of more aggressively while she's on cooldown. So like for example, you might wait, how do I get rid of this? You might want to be like, where is it? Let's just go back. So okay, so here she uses Q. Now you move up, and when she goes for that CS, you Q auto her. Then you move back, you wait a bit more, wait for her to use another Q. Yeah, she uses another one. Okay, now you go back to playing really aggressive. So the next CS she wants is probably this one. So you just like come up and just like stand next to it. So that if she wants to get it, if she wants to auto attack it, you can just destroy her with a Q auto. But the problem is like basically you're not in a position to actually like harass her for these creeps. And so all that's happening is like you have this strong lane bully champion, but it just doesn't mean anything, you know?
Yeah, I'm being super passive.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that. This is definitely better for you. I don't know why she's fighting you in the creep wave, but... Okay, now you should be careful here. So, the thing with Viktor and like most other mages is they're very like cooldown based. Like normally you don't want a long trade. Like if you think of something like, imagine you're playing Viktor versus like Yon, right? Like you use your cooldowns and then you want to stop fighting because he just does more damage over time, right? Like because he's got auto attacks that are strong and you don't. Now with Karma, it's like, okay, the thing with Karma is that here, like she walked into you and you've used all your cooldowns, but her Q is coming back up. So all you need to do here is like trade and then like probably walk away. You basically want to disengage this trade before her Q comes back up. But the problem is like you extend it so long. Like if you pause right now, the trade's like amazing for you, right? Like in terms of health. But the problem is you end up chasing a bit too long. Now you take like a ton of damage on the way out, and now the trade is like pretty bad for you, you know?
Yeah, I nearly die here.
Yeah. So that's basically like I mean you probably see already that a lot of mid lane is just all about cooldowns. Like who has cooldowns, who doesn't, like trying to punish cooldowns, trying to position to like bait cooldowns. Cooldowns are just kind of like the name of the game, especially for like a mage versus mage matchup. So yeah, you're kind of you're in an alright spot, I suppose, but it's still kind of scary. I like the E. The ganks, it's fine.
I don't think anything happened with those little skirmish.
Oh my god. Yeah, okay, this is like definitely not how we want to start the game. Like you would normally be expected to be like, you know, ahead 1v1, like, you know, trying to force your opponent out of lane, but yeah, just because of like how the first 3 levels have gone, it's really tough. But the good news is I think all of this is like very fixable, you know, like if you fix the itemization and you start like playing more aggro, just like using your Q on cooldown, trying to punish her when she uses those cooldowns randomly, you're just going to find that the early game goes just so much smoother for you, you know, because like instead of it being this close, you would just have a kill on her, you know, like she would just be dead. And then like, suddenly you're like 1-0-0 and the game looks like really good.
With Viktor, you usually want to shove the wave, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, normally, because like Viktor is pretty good at harassing in a tower, so like what most people do on Viktor is like shove the first 3 waves, like build up a big advantage, and then after that you can look to freeze it if you want, because then you'll be safe from ganks and they can't walk up to farm. But those first 3 waves especially, you definitely want to push.
Okay.
After that it's more like dependent, you know, on like what you want. Like do you want more safety, do you want more harass? Just like, yeah, kind of depends. But okay, so like this right here, I would say, okay, so you end up ghosting for this, which is, it's not the worst, honestly, because you can get back to this wave in time. Okay, I think you probably did like stay, actually, let's just see here. Okay, so you chase Karma. I think you probably want to turn around a bit quicker here. Although you get good harass at the end. Basically, like, the thing is, when you make this play, you're, like, consciously giving up creeps mid. Now, giving up 2 creeps for, like, a chunk is not too bad, but the longer you stay, the more you end up giving up, right? Like, it ends up, actually, you lose quite a lot of CS. And even though Karma dies, you probably end up coming out a little behind overall here. Yeah, like, she actually has a little bit more gold than you, because, like, you gave up so much CS. So I think what I'd probably do is, rather than ghosting after her here, I would honestly just probably push the wave. Like the thing is, again, on Victor, you don't really want skirmishes. You just like want the 1v1. And like here, I think just prioritize your wave, try and push this in, and make sure it doesn't end up like denying you a ton of creeps like this. But okay, like it happened. You come back mid. So you should also push this wave. So the thing is, Karma is still dead for a pretty long time. And you've got a least near you, and you also have a ward. So if you like ward over this wall, you should be safe from any Diana gank. Like I don't think there's any way she can kind of like come mid here. And the problem is like again, because you choose not to push this wave. Oh, you did. Okay, nice. You cancelled. I like it. I was gonna
Yeah.
say because you didn't push that, it was gonna be bad, but no, you pushed it. So that's good. Good base. Okay, so second thing would be it's almost always better on first base to go Dark Seal instead of Ampto, because Dark Seal is just like the most insanely broken AP item in the game. So Dark Seal is like a must pick up. It's just must buy, I guess, rather. It's just an insanely efficient item, and it's only a little worse than an Ampto. Like, let me bring up Dark Seal. So like gives 15 AP instead of 20, but you have the potential to just end up having like an item that's worth almost 4 times its cost, you know, because it's just giving so much AP. So yeah, you pretty much always want to pick up a Dark Seal on your first base, or if not on your first base, like pick it up on your second base. So yeah, I think here, grab Dark Seal, refillable, and probably a pink. So pinks are controversial, because I think pinks and solo queue are a little overrated, honestly. Because a lot of the time, they could just end up being like placed and wasted. But I do think that if you don't have flash, not having a pink is really scary, because it's just like way less vision that you have. So yeah, try like first base, ideally like Dark Seal, plus refillable, like if you didn't start corrupting, plus pink, and then like whatever else you can afford, you know? Like you get those items, and then you kind of think about what else you can buy.
I've
Okay.
also been going, some games I'll go tier
Yeah, that's fine
as
too.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, tier's definitely like worse early game, but it is better scaling. So it just comes back to like, you know, what do you want? Like, do you really want to pressure early game, or do you want to like scale for team fights? I honestly think that both are pretty viable on Victor, so yeah, both are like solid. This champ is really annoying, especially if you like, yeah, because now it's kind of difficult because you don't really have a lead over Karma. And like you'd kind of expect to bully the early game quite a lot. So now like she's sort of got to the point where like normally what happens on Victor is other champs like naturally get a bit stronger than Victor. But Victor should have like a gold lead, so you should be able to buy better items. But the problem is because you based and bought like similar worth of items, you know, like she spent 450 and you spend like 435, like you're just even, which probably means you're like a little behind. You know, like it's really important that you're winning the first base on Victor.
Yeah.
But this poke is good, so like that. Yeah, nice. Just poking over and over. It's good. Yeah, don't really have any problem with any of this. Okay, I think she's probably... Oh no, she didn't base. Okay, what a bad man. Okay, you should be a little more careful with how you use your E, because the thing is, like, E, again, is like a reasonably long cooldown, and it costs a lot of mana. So you really... It feels really painful to miss E. Now, that being said, missing Victor E, it's like... It's more up to you to miss than it is them to dodge. You know, like it's a fast enough skill shot that it's very, very difficult to dodge. But if you find it difficult to hit Victor E, try and like time your E like when they go to CS. Because I think it's like it is an ability that you can just spam on cooldown, but at the same time, like if you ever miss it, then it's like not really worth it, you know? And also, I don't know if you do this, but a lot of Victors, I don't personally, but a lot of Victors cast Victor E normal cast as opposed to smart casting it. Do you smart cast or do you just like normal cast
I
it?
use SmartCast.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So I also smart cast it, and I've never had a problem with it. But I know like there are lots and lots of Victor players that prefer to normal cast its ability. So if you just like find it hard to aim or whatever, like that might be something, because you know like this one here,
Yeah.
That's like obviously pretty painful to miss. So it might be something you try, but yeah, I've never really had a problem using its smart cast. So kind of up to you.
Yeah, I'll go into the training and just kind of like mess around with it for a while.
Yeah, I think
'Cause it's
there's like a binding you can do. It must be in keybinds somewhere. Oh wait, this is the this is a spectator client, so it probably doesn't have it. But there's like a way to set it so that like you can either quick cast or normal cast the ability depending on like a modifier. So like for example, maybe by default it's smart cast, but if you press like Control E, then it's like normal cast. So you could set up something like that to where you could choose. Um Depending on the situation. So that might be something you kind of like look into. Because yeah, like having two E's just like miss like this, it's really bad. Because like look how much damage this does. 172. Obviously it's reduced by MR, but it's like a lot of damage to just miss because you're aiming badly, you know, or like not timing it
yeah.
correctly.
And now I'm running out of mana already.
Yeah. Again, that like shouldn't be too bad if you're running like TP corrupting. Like that should sort of solve that problem. But yeah, it definitely shouldn't happen, but okay, we got the chapter. So now we're probably at the point where, you know, you probably can just use the on cooldown, and even if you miss it, it's probably fine. But I would definitely agree with like your assessment of feeling like you're having trouble impacting the early game. Because yeah, the reality is like if you don't win your early game as Victor, you don't really offer anything until like first item, right? And that's like a pretty long time to be useless in solo queue. So yeah, that feels pretty bad.
Yeah.
Now, once you get to this point, you should have enough push that it's very easy for you to like get some deep vision. So, like normally in the very early game, you pretty much just want to ward like places like this. You know, just like shallow around the river kind of keeps you safe. Now, once you get a pink, that gives you permission to kind of move your vision further up. So like good pink locations are places like these. And that allows you to place wards in places like this, you know, here, here, here. You know, just like allows you to move up your vision basically to wherever you think is good. And honestly, like it's pretty hard to find a bad ward if it's further up. You know, like if you place wards in any of like these locations, chances are they're gonna spot someone, right? So
Right.
yeah, like if you can get wards deeper, it's almost always more valuable, and especially now, like you should have control of your matchup. You have a pink and you have two wards. I would be trying to push this in and then try and like get some control for your team. Might be sort of hard because Karma also has like pretty good push. It's kind of annoying. Yeah, I guess like it's really hard for you just because you're not strong enough. But it's like just comes back to that thing over and over of like if you look at what you've done for your team, it's like we haven't got any wards. We can't really roam because we're playing Victor. We don't have a CS lead. We haven't like made it so Karma can't play the game. So it's just yeah, like right now we're
No
playing
impact.
yeah, it's exactly. It's just like you're kind of coin flipping the game of like if your team is good, you'll get the opportunity to scale and carry, and if they're not, you're just gonna lose at 20 minutes, and it's not gonna be anything to do with you, which is like it's a rough spot to be in for solo queue, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good ult though, and good poke. Like, yeah, this is good. You're like slowly whittling her away. It's nice that she hasn't bought refillable, which is definitely a big mistake. Okay. Oh, she's so tanky. How unfair is that shit? Oh,
She is super tanky.
yeah,
No, she bought a nullifying mantle. That's
I
why.
know.
She's
What
like,
a loser, man. It's good though, because you're double AP, but it's still cringe. Okay, so you get the plate. And let's play. Okay, so this is kind of a mistake. So whenever your opponent bases, whether it's because they die or because they actually recall, normally you need to find a base pretty shortly after as well. Like normally you just push one wave and then base. And the reason is that like if your opponent bases, even if they're weaker than you in terms of gold earned, they might have just spent more gold than you. You know, like here, you're actually ahead of Karma in gold, but she's actually spent more gold than you know, because you've got 1100 just sitting in your inventory. So that means you really, really don't want to get locked in lane here, because the longer you spend in lane, the weaker you're going to be, because you can't actually use all this gold that's just sitting in your inventory. You know, this is like 4 kills worth of gold that's just sitting here, right? So
right.
after you get the kill, like pushing a wave and hitting this plate, completely fine. But right now, you really need to run back and just base so that you can get back in time for this wave. Because like, if you stay here and like poke Diana, it makes it hard for you to reset, right? Because like you've already lost a little bit of time. But okay, like you probably still have time if you start it now. But if you cancel now, Now it's like, now I'd say it's like really kind of bad. Where is
Yeah, I
Karma?
got
Okay,
for
yeah,
that last wave.
you definitely got lucky because I think if Karma, rather than walking like through the jungle randomly, if Karma just like comes here, contests you for the wave, and then she can either like freeze it, or she can just like run and cancel your base, you would find it really, really difficult to reset here. So, basically, I would say like general rule: if your opponent like bases / dies, try push one wave, then base ASAP, and be really careful of getting like locked in lane with a lot of gold, because it's just going to mean that in theory you're stronger, but in reality you aren't, because you just have so much money, right? Like you have 5 kills worth of gold here. If she cancelled you, it would be really, really rough. Okay, so second thing, or a couple other things. First off, I would not recommend buying 2 pinks. So that's like kind of where it comes back to. Pinks in solo queue, especially 1 or 2, are really valuable. Like for protecting the early game, like keeping control of the river. But buying too many pinks is really bad, because like let's say over the game you buy 10 pinks, that's 750 gold, you know. That's like 2.5 kills just gone for nothing. Not to mention that they actually get gold when they kill the control wards, right? So buying too many control wards can definitely be bad, and I would recommend just like probably over to the total game, I would say like buy like 1 to 2 pinks for early game, and then like another like 1 to 2 for later in the game. But definitely don't buy more than like 5 pinks, I would say, if you're playing like a hard carry champ.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you did say pinks are overrated in solo queue, which I do agree with, because
Yeah.
people just place them in stupid
Yeah,
locations to get
exactly.
people's
I think
kills.
it's like a holdover or something from competitive almost, where it's like, you know, pinks in competitive are really broken for controlling areas, but in solo queue, people place them and they die like 3 seconds later. You know, it's like so useless.
That actually happened sometime this game, and I'm like, just
Yeah.
beat myself up over it.
I also would recommend staying on yellow trinket until at least 20 minutes, because blue trinket is really good for checking like bushes that you're gonna face check. So, and it's also really good for checking Baron. But yellow trinket kind of like keeps you safe while laning, and also it's gonna be important if you start like side laning in the mid game. You kind of need yellow trinkets to just drop in the jungle. Otherwise, yeah, otherwise it's just like not really gonna work. So I would try and stay away from blue trinket until around 20 minutes or so.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah,
Place
that
pink
was it.
ward instantly dies. Um, yeah, that sucks. But hey, you got 2, right? So it's fine. Okay, guy dies again. So this is good. Like at least it's pressured your lane a lot, and you'll see us is like pretty decent. Um, I will say as well that like you know how I was like showing you on the kind of rift kit thing before. Generally, if you can pink in this bush, it is more valuable than this bush. Like a pink in this bush is fine. But if you have time to pink further out, it's probably better. And I think here it's like you probably want to hit these plates. So I think like you don't really have time to go for this. But at the same time, then just hold your pink and like come pink here later and just like focus on getting the plates for now. I think that ward is pretty like yeah, it's just pretty mediocre, you know, it doesn't really pressure a whole lot. Okay. My god, he actually lived.
Pantheon blocked it.
Okay. So
Although Wukong's pretty far ahead, so I'm kind of scared of him.
yeah. So I think here this is like a yeah, okay, this is kind of bad. So in general, like it's always better you always want to be like hugging to a side of the mid. Like you either want to be like hugging towards this side of the lane or hugging towards this side of the lane. Like wherever you have vision normally, right? Or wherever is like safer for you. So like right here is like kind of a bait, because like you do have vision top side and you have vision bot side. But I'd say you have more vision bot side. You know, it's like you have 2 wards here, your jungler and Pantheon are both on this side. So like whenever you like are hitting plates or farming this wave, you want to be doing it on this side. But it's like real weird because Wukong is like right above you and you are like as close to him as you could possibly be, you know? Like you're forced to flash,
Yeah.
but if you're here, you just walk down and it's fine. Like you walk out and it's all good. But you're just like forced to flash here for no reason whatsoever. Then, okay, just gonna clear another wave. I'd say also this was kind of a mistake, so Like, base timings, admittedly, in League are not the easiest thing, but I think, like, the things I'm normally thinking about for bases is, like, okay, so I'll make a little base timing thing here for you. Basically, I'm thinking, like, you know, what are my resources? So this is, like, it would be, like, sums, cooldowns, health, mana. Like, those four. Those are, like, the big ones, right? So, like, if we're looking at you right now, okay, you have no flash, you have no ult, we have like 30% health, and we're like half mana. So in terms of our resources, it feels really fucking bad. And then the next thing is like, okay, how much like gold do we have? We have 1,040, and Ludens is 1,050. So you have the perfect base here anyway. You know, like if you stay for more waves, it's not like you get a Ludens plus a bit extra. Like you already have what you need. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
here, like what ends up happening is like even though you have an item and even though you can't pressure the map, and actually that's something you should be asking yourself is like, can I realistically pressure the map like with your current resources? And I think the answer is quite clearly no. Like you can't do anything. So what ends up happening is like you try and stay for a little bit of extra gold that doesn't matter. And then like if you base now, you just lose a wave, right? So you don't really want to base either. But then at some point, because you missed that base timing, you're just forced into missing this wave because you took too long to base. And that feels really bad, right? Like you just lose a whole wave for free. And again, it's not like you bought anything extra, I don't think, right? Like you... Oh,
Maybe another pink. I don't know. I can't
maybe another
remember.
pink. What happened to my replay? I think the replay just died. Let me... Oh yeah, when not responding. Okay, let me restart it. I don't know why I did that.
In heavy poke matchups, would you
Mm-hmm.
go resolve secondary tree for second wind?
You
Or just
can, but honestly, I don't think you need it. But, like,
okay.
yeah, I guess if you felt like you really needed it, you can, but I don't think you do. Admittedly,
Okay.
some people are doing that in competitive at the moment, but in my mind, it's just not really necessary. Like,
Okay.
yeah, especially not at this level. You're better off just getting like the cosmic scaling, which is really really nice, I think.
I've been switching between. I do cosmic insight, and then I
Yeah,
switch between magical footwear and biscuits.
yeah, I think boots are in general a lot better than biscuits, especially if you're taking TP, because like mana is a bit more important if you're taking biscuits, or sorry, if you're taking ghosts, because you're just like mana's gonna be a bit harder to come by. But if you're TP magic boots, I like that a lot more.
Okay.
Okay, so where were we? It was like got your second kill. Oh yeah, so you got denied on the Luden space, which felt really bad. Where was that? Yeah, that was like right here. Okay, so you like, oh, you can still see this by the way, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So yeah, you got forced into basing, which sucked. Admittedly, you've kind of, I would say, still had a reasonable outcome of the early game. Like, you are ahead of your opponent in 1v1, but I'd say it was mostly because of Elise, like, pressuring your lane a lot. Yeah, like, Elise has kind of been here constantly, but it has been mostly good. So that's, like, kind of the early game out of the way, which means we're sort of in the mid-game now. So in the mid-game, as Victor, mainly you just want to, like, try and keep up your, like, gold and XP, like, as much as you can, and then just, like, pretty much like be at all the objective fights. So this will mainly be like, you know, dragons slash heralds, and then just like then it'll just like come down to how good your team fighting is. So we'll kind of see that now, I suppose. So should be pretty easy just to kind of farm.
I could probably look for a kill on her here and just I was more aggressive.
Yeah, especially if you were just, you know, a bit more fed. Okay, so this is, yeah, I would say this is kind of almost like a product of like what's been happening. So like, Wukong crosses mid, so it's kind of scary for you to contest this wave. That makes sense. Another rule you kind of need to have in your head, I think, is, well, for early game as well, is like try not to go past like halfway point of mid with no vision, especially with no flash. So like halfway point of mid, I'd say is like this part right here. And so like if you walk past that and you don't have flash or any vision on top side or bot side, it's really really risky. So like I guess you were kind of baited by like Pantheon going in, so I kind of get it. Yeah, I guess I kind of get it. But you're just like insanely far up.
Actually insane that she survived. I was like
Yeah,
super
that is
pissed.
pretty unlucky. And I think Yeah, it's just like you don't have any vision anyway. You're probably better off. I guess you don't really realize you're in danger, but yeah, it's like you're probably better off running topside after. Admittedly, though, I think this is like pretty hard to see, and I don't mind this death too much. So, yeah. It is just, well, actually it did end up being pretty bad. I think you probably just need to look to run upwards after, because you have like a bit more vision topside. So like that's a bit safer than going back to your tower. But also this guy has like 4-0, so I won't hold it 2 against you. Yeah, but anyway, you got the sword shoes. Come back.
I should have probably went Lucidity's since she already has Aegis. And
Yeah, I think.
What would you think?
Probably like. I actually think it's probably fine to go Source, because like no one else has magic resist, but I think if they were building MR, yeah, you're probably right. You probably should go Lucidities, because they kind of should, like with double AP mid jungle. But yeah, for some reason it's only like Karma building it. Now I do think here, pathing out of base, this is like kind of bad. So in the mid game, right, like you need to be thinking like, how do we get to those objective fights, and also like how are you going to get farm? It's like right here, there's no dragon for 4 minutes. So there's like basically, you don't like have to just group at the moment. So what you can do is just like prioritize however you're going to get farm, right? Like how are you going to keep up your golden XP? Now the thing is here is that Jen is already farming bot and Yon is walking mid. So that means you need to be going top and grabbing this wave, because like what instead happens is, so Jen farms bot, Yon farms mid, and you don't get to farm anything. So like sure, you get lucky and you get a kill, but it's worth what? How much is this worth? 274, which honestly isn't bad, but it's like not guaranteed that this happens, and you lose 1 wave, 2 waves,
Probably more gold than that kill.
3 waves,
Yeah.
4 waves. So yeah, it's like you, by not going top, it actually ends up like way worse. So you just, like, I think ideally Jhin is mid and you're bot or something here. But the reality is with solo queue, you just need to adapt to your teammates and find out where you can get farm. And I think here, if you notice that like Yon's farming mid and Jin's farming bot, it's like your players to go top. But fortunately you got a kill, so that makes it like less bad, I suppose. Now even after this, after you get this kill, okay, like you got it, you still need to spread back out. So like, again, go to this wave, because you should never be just sharing gold with other carry like this, where you're like both stacked up on a wave just sharing it. That feels awful, because like you're both not getting the full gold or the full XP. Meanwhile, there's like full waves of golden XP dying up here and no one's farming them. Okay, flashing at the kill, yeah, not bad. So I think you actually played the team fight pretty well, but the problem is just like you're so weak compared to where you should be that it's gonna be real hard to carry the game, I think. Sonya's, yeah, Sonya's makes sense. It's a pretty rough game, to be honest, to be a Viktor. Okay, so you're farming.
Yeah, they got the dive comp.
Yeah, it does look rough. Okay, so another thing is, in mid-game as Viktor, so I'd say like 15 minutes plus, it's, you can start looking to do jungle camps. So I'll write down jungle camps. Basically, like, any time in the mid-game, if you just have downtime and you're not doing anything, try and do a camp. And also, like, if your jungler is away from the camps, like let's say your jungler is ganking top and your bot, you might as well take a bot camp, because they're not going to be in the area anyway. So like right here, when you're just walking around in circles, you should probably come and do raptors, which is like another 100 gold, because instead you kind of just like walk in circles. I don't think that guy's very killable. Yeah, so like this is really weird, right? It's like you've just spent about, what, like a minute here? Also, just like walking around, not really farming or doing anything. Yeah. So yeah, that you kind of fix those periods of downtime just by like farming raptors and stuff. Now this is annoying because yeah, Jhin kind of comes here at an awkward time, but I think after you see Jhin here, same thing. You like want to find a way to get back to bot and keep farming. Or if Jhin goes, okay, I guess Jin's going bot. Actually ended up okay. Yeah, I guess that's fine. I think you're fine though.
I die stupidly here.
I mean, hey, at least it's a trade and you have the shutdown. Like, it's not the worst. I don't mind it that much. Okay, I guess you're just farming mid. Yeah, I don't want to go like too much into the skirmish execution because I feel like in silver at least the most important thing is just like getting the desk down and getting the CS up and just like starting to just have more gold basically, and kind of slapping people with your wallets, you know, because like
Yeah,
right now
and
you're
then
just kind of you're just so weak.
in matchups like this, where like there's the top laner's 8-1, it's
Yeah,
kind of hard to do anything.
yeah, it is going to be really hard to do anything here if you're not like fed from your lane basically, or like if you only have 150 CS at 23, it's just not really going to be enough. Okay, so this actually probably does matter a bit. So it was one farming mid, which is fine. You guys are kind of looking aggressively. You tied out. Okay, and then you just kind of end up walking into Wukong. So I think here, like, you probably need to realize again that, like, bot side is your safest side here, because, like, Wukong was pushing top. So if you can honestly just keep walking straight here and you're fine. But if you walk that way, you just, like, end up dying. But, yeah, I honestly really don't think these matter a whole lot, because, like, the game is already in such a... I would say this is, like, a pretty unwinnable state for you, honestly. Because, like, you just don't have the gold necessary to carry this, and, like, bot and top are really, really fed. We can kind of just, like, skim through the rest of it, but I think most of it will be just, you know, really cleaning up the early game and like trying to get more CS and stuff. Let's just have a look at the rest of this though.
We're just so far behind; it doesn't even matter at this
Yeah,
point.
exactly. It's like you are not you only just finished Zhonya's and this guy is at wit's end, so like you have to buy a Void now, but you haven't even started building Void, so like he's unkillable and he's got a Karma to shield him and a Morgana, so yeah. I don't
Yeah,
know what you could do at this point. Just farming. And
both
now he
my
has a
lanes.
Maul. What the fuck?
Yeah, both my lanes lost pretty hard.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I mean, admittedly, unless you're smurfing,
I
this
did.
might not be a game you win. But, at the same time, you could have played this a lot better and maybe at least given your team, like, a chance of winning this.
Yeah.
Okay, so this game is pretty over, honestly. So, let's kind of talk about what the important stuff is to work on. So, I would say biggest thing... Okay, so first off, the runes and itemization, I think all that can be, like, optimized to just, like, make the game a little bit easier for yourself. You know, like, TP plus corrupting, going Dark Seal, you know, just, like, all that sort of stuff. And maybe in other games you can opt for Strike or whatever. I think next thing is, like, so cooldowns are super important. I think also trying to position more aggressively. Try and, like, punish your opponent, like, when they go for CS, like that's another one that's really important. I think maybe E usage as well, like really try not to waste this ability. It's so important that your E hits. You know, spam Q on cooldown. I think that's another one that you can pretty much do. What else do we have here? Oh, I guess like there's a little bit about the base timing. So we kind of talked about all the relevant stuff for base timings already, but I do think you kind of entered your base timings a couple times.
Right.
Maybe also like thinking about like which side of mid to hug to, slash like you know, just like warding further out as well. Um, yeah, and maybe like being careful walking past like halfway point of mid with no vision. I think that's pretty important. And then in the mid game, definitely like just like farm more in mid game. So like side laning and jungle camps. Basically, those are going to be the way you get them. But yeah, I think if this game, if you'd cleaned up the early game, it would be just like way, way, way easier. Especially like if you can play more aggressively, you know, because you might actually be able to build up a bigger lead.
Right. Yeah.
So
So the biggest thing is abusing enemy cooldowns. That's what
pretty
I need to
much,
get the
and
hang
like
of.
you know, just like yeah, spamming your Q and like using it even better, and just like trying to play a bit more aggro. I mean, I'll upload it so you can always go back and look at it. We have time to look at another matchup as well, like just real quick. But is there anything from this one that you have questions about?
No, you pretty much covered it all. And you like I go back and watch these VODs and like, wow, I play like garbage. Um, you said another VOD.
Yeah, we can just quickly like skim through the early game of another one, just see if it's like sort of similar problems.
Um, there's that one that was a defeat that went 9-3.
Right.
can't remember what happened in this game, but it seems like I was fed and I just wasn't able to carry. Can't remember.
Okay, so this game, you were playing... Let's see, this is Viktor vs. Talia, I think? Viktor vs. Talia... Like, this is, I would say, definitely a Doran's Ring game, because I think if you position well, Talia shouldn't be able to do much to you, but I think it's also definitely an area game rather than a first strike game. Although, there's an argument that you could want, like, first strike to help kind of scale harder to deal with the tanks. Personally, I'd go with area, but, like, if you want to go first strike, it's honestly not too big a deal. Like, the thing is, both the keystones are really good on Viktor, so, yeah, it's not the worst thing to do.
Okay.
Let's move those around. So same thing, like she uses Q, that means like you can look to play like more aggressively. Actually, this is good. Yeah, that was good Q usage. That was definitely better than the other game. Like you harassed her when she went for the creep, baiting out her cooldowns. So it should be same thing. She like comes up to the creep, you punish. Yeah, like I think here there's definitely opportunities to find a Q on her, but we've kind of already talked about it, like same sort of stuff as before.
Yeah, way too passive.
Yeah, and you might find as well that like you just naturally favor Corrupting Potion more once you start like getting used to trading more often, because you're just gonna find yourself losing more health, right? Like that'll be kind of normal, I think. Alright, yeah, this is all fine. Yeah, same thing with the E usage again here. So like if you don't, either because your enemy has too much movement speed or you're just like bad at using the ability, if you feel like you can't just like hit them with it, try and wait for them to go for the CS, because like you just can't afford to waste cooldown. And like a really good Viktor can just spam this ability on cooldown, but like you're like 95% of the way there if you just harass them whenever they go for creeps. Because like what, you miss like maybe 2 seconds on the cooldown each time or something. And like you don't really have enough mana to use this thing on cooldown early game anyway. So if you want to use it more tactically, I think there's nothing wrong with that. Definitely be better for like the hit rate. Because I think, yeah, normally you should have probably like a 90% plus hit rate on your E during lane. It's really up to you to miss it. Okay, good poke. Okay, so I think you should pull this wave. So the thing is, Viktor doesn't have enough wave clear to kind of push waves and reset early. So you have two choices here. It's either you can try and pull this wave like up a bit so that it doesn't fully crash on this tower. Yeah, kind of like what you're doing now, and just pull it a bit further. That way it'll freeze here so she can't quite crash it. And then you can either stay and just like last hit them, or you can like pull it into here and then recall. But I think this is kind of the worst of both, where it's like you let the wave crash, so you haven't frozen it and you haven't based, which means again Talia just gets to come back with an item advantage, and now you're just kind of like stuck in lane, you know? Like I think,
yeah, without TP again.
Yeah, TP admittedly does make laning so much easier. Like it's so broken for lane, it's not funny. Yeah, because this is like this is really awkward, because you have like a winning matchup, but now you like basically can't harass at all. I think as well here, the hugging, you should be a bit more, I don't know what the word is, like cognizant, or a bit more conscious, I guess, of the fact that you really need to hug bot side here. Like you don't want to be in the middle of the lane. You want to be like on this side of the lane, because when Maokai shows up, where is it? Like, to be honest, oh, I feel like you didn't really like, you weren't thinking about it, I don't think. The fact that you were just like standing in the middle of the lane here. Like you kind of got lucky a little bit that you swapped to this side when Maokai showed up. Because I think if he'd showed up like 5 seconds earlier, you probably just died because you're hugging to the wrong side. Oh, you die anyway. That sucks. Yeah. I guess like you probably should just ghost here early. Because if you do have ghost, like it's a short cooldown, so don't worry about just like popping it early. But yeah, I think again having TP would just make this lane so much easier. So my things would be like
always take TP.
pretty much. Like it's so good for lane, especially on a champ like Viktor, and it makes just the game so much easier. So TP probably better than ghost most games. Again, like hugging towards the side, super important. Also, maybe a little bit of like, yeah, with the wave control, like maybe you could have frozen it there, but it's definitely a bit of a minor thing. It's more just like the overall thing is you don't want to end up locked in lane, because that's like happened to you twice now, where your opponent like bases, spends their gold, and you're like stuck there, and then it's just like really difficult for you to contest. Because actually, going back to this, where was it? Like, when she pushes it in, you actually have so many choices here. You could like, where is it? Okay, you could like let the wave fully crash, kill it all, and then do a recall of your own. You could pull the wave and then recall. You could pull the wave and then stay. But the worst thing to do is to let it crash so she doesn't lose anything and not to base. Because that's like, one, you didn't deny her anything, and two, now you're behind on items, So
Yeah.
that's like literally the worst possible outcome. And yeah, I'd say this is like kind of the same thing as before, where you're playing Viktor, this like strong 1v1 champion, and you've fallen behind in the 1v1, which means it's really, you can team fight well and carry this game, but you're kind of like, your agency or like your impact on the game for the first like 15 minutes is just gone pretty much. And that feels like really, really bad. Because especially right now, the game is pretty fast paced. If you just like give up the first 15 minutes, like it feels pretty bad, right? Like the game often is, I wouldn't say like completely decided, but it's like significantly advantaged towards one team by that point. And so you kind of, from the games I've seen so far, it's like you just start at such a deficit that you have a huge like uphill battle ahead of you. And sure, like if you play all the team fights really well, like you can win it, but it would just be so much easier not to have this happen. Okay, so let me go back a bit. So, okay, so where was it? So when you're versus a roaming champion like Talia or Talon or Katarina or just like any champ that's gonna roam, normally it's better to ward the middle of the lane. And the reason is that's going to tell you like where they go. Like if they're basing, if they're going up, if they're going down. Because a ward like this, it tells you very, very little. And like, I always hate warding this push. And I think if for whatever reason you want to ward bot side, it's literally better to ward over the wall and just ward like right here. Because at least it shows more area. But I think if you just like ward the middle of the lane, because the thing is, if you're stuck on this side, you shouldn't get ganked anyway. So like warding away like out here doesn't matter too much. And then at least your ward will tell you like where Talia is going. So I think that can be pretty useful. Yeah, like at this point in the lane, you really want to have Lost Chapter so that you can just like spam ease on her and like force her out. But the problem is because you don't have that, it's like she's getting through this kind of stage of the lane kind of for free, and then like, yeah, you're being the one forced to base first. That's really wrong. Like normally, because Viktor is so strong 1v1, you always like force your opponent to base first and then, deny a wave and then you base. And actually one thing I'd like kind of recommend doing would be to just like look up some like Viktor matchups and just like, you don't have to like super in-depth analyze them, but just kind of have a look at like how they play. Because if I just go to YouTube right now, right, and I go say Viktor versus Talia, and I just open like this game here, say Chovy Viktor versus Talia. If you kind of like, I don't know, if you just skimmed through this, you would see that like he has he has corrupting pot Airy for a start. But you can see
like he's already dominating the lane.
Yeah, it's like he is the one forcing her to recall, right? Like he is full HP, she's almost out of mana, and like look at how different the first base looks here compared to yours. This is like she bases and spends 400 gold. He bases and spends what, 650? So he's ahead in items. He's up like 8 CS. He's up a level or up XP now because he forced her to base first. And like compare this to yours, and you're just so behind where you should be. So obviously, like I sort of sometimes I kind of don't recommend low reload players looking, or like obviously I want them to watch replays, but sometimes they take the wrong things away from it. But just like look at it and kind of just have a general look at how different it is from yours, because I think you'll be surprised at how big a difference there is, even in just like what their like goals are in the matchup and stuff,
Yeah.
And that I think
Definitely.
as well can be a really easy way to know what to take. Like there he took like corrupting area and he took ghost. Like I mean I'd still take TP, but like if he took ghost, like you can take ghost too, but yeah, I don't know, it just kind of depends what you want. I think it's really good though to have someone to copy, because like the great thing about being lower elo is you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like a lot of the higher level players have already done the hard work for you. All you really need to do is like copy them as close as you can, you know? And when you get really
Hmm.
high elo and you understand the game, like that's when you can start to kind of experiment with stuff, like maybe something that fits more to your play style, or maybe like there's something you figured out that other people haven't. But like at least at your level, and honestly, even at like I'd say low challenger level, the players just don't understand the game well enough to kind of make those decisions for themselves. Or like you can, but it's just like way easier to copy someone else's homework, so to speak, you know, because they've already done it for you.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I guess we'll just kind of have a look through the rest of this lane. I mean, I don't think there's too much to it. It's just like you're very, very behind. Like, how much gold are you down? Like 1k or 800 or so. Um, I guess
Somehow I
la.
end
Oh
up getting
yeah,
9 kills. I can't remember.
yeah. I mean, oh, Victor scales well, so I can
Yeah.
believe that. It's just like, you know, again, it's like if you play the team fights well, you can definitely carry. But you're putting yourself at such a deficit to begin with that it's gonna be really hard. Um, Okay, so here would be another thing. This is kind of last point we'll talk about, but when you're playing a champ that really wants 1v1s and doesn't really want skirmishes, it's really important that you push the wave before going to the objective. Because what you really need to, the way you win objective fights as Victor is by forcing your opponent not to be at them. So like here, rather than walking the drag, you're better off just pushing mid and keeping Talia like away from the drag. Because like if you have a 4v4 and Talia is allowed to be here, she is like way more impactful than you are. But if you have a 1v1, normally you're more impactful than her. So you're basically Victor is trying to make it like a 4v3, like with Victor there and Talia not able to be there, rather than like a 4v4. Because a 4v4 will normally be bad for Victor. You need like a numbers advantage to make it work.
Right.
So just like in general, like this is like a general rule for pretty much everything, but push mid before like moving slash making a play. But especially for Victor, like try not to skirmish like before first item, and try instead just like keep forcing like the 1v1. So
Okay. My jungler and my elo, they always call for backup on first scuttle, even though like I'm pretty weak in the 2v2.
yeah, I'd say it's like same thing. It's like you want to be strong enough over your opponent that the enemy mid can't come, and if they can, generally that'll be bad for Victor, you know. Like you
Right.
will want to have
So
your
I mean,
opponent like low or like under their tower, or you have the wave push so that they can't answer and it becomes a 2v1. But like yeah, if the enemy mid is allowed to come, it's gonna be, you want to be thinking like, okay, I'll do what I can to help, but realistically, like I want to get the fuck out of here, you know?
yeah. I mean, if I'm pushing their wave and like and it's gonna crash and they still go to scuttle, then they're just missing out on farm
Yeah,
anyways.
exactly. Then it's like as long as you don't die in that 2v2, you're just winning because they're just giving up like a shit ton. So I'm glad you mentioned that,
Right.
because that's yeah, that's good understanding. So yeah, okay. Well, I'll copy all this to you and I'll upload the session a bit later, and then I'll message it to you. So is there any other questions while I'm here?
I don't think so right now. Should I just schedule the next VOD sometime or whenever?
Yeah, pretty much. I'd say like take some time, obviously, because you don't want to come back and have me tell you the exact same stuff as this
Right.
time. But at the same time, like if you do want to do it soon, I don't mind. If you want to take like months, I don't mind that either. Just as long as you want, really. Like I think most people generally do like a week or 2 weeks, but like it doesn't
Okay,
bother
yeah,
me.
two
We
weeks
can do
sounds good.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to like get all this practice in and make sure I am doing all the correct early game tactics before I schedule the next VOD.
Yeah, okay. So I'll upload this and send it to you, and then if you have other questions like later, if you think of them, like just message me and I'll like yeah, I'm happy to respond anytime. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate the you meeting up with me and going over the VODs.
Yeah, all good.
Super
Well,
helpful.
yep. All right, good luck.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.